Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing part 10 of my Tuff Shed YouTube studio build. Although the studio is not quite finished yet, this will be the first complete video that I do in here. Exciting stuff. So you ready? Let's get into this. Just a quick note, always remember to check all the rules and regulations regarding construction in your particular municipality. If you're thinking about doing something like this yourself, remember that you may or may not be allowed to do certain things without licensed contractors. And even if you are allowed to, if you feel uncomfortable with any parts of the construction, then it might be best to hire a professional because a lot of this stuff can be extremely dangerous. At the end of the last video, I just finished building all the cabinets and drawers. Next, it was time to move on to installing all the handles. That kind of thing can be pretty daunting because there's no pre-drilled holes in any of the drawer faces for that type of thing. So it really is up to you to make sure that you're perfectly aligned on every single one of those. IKEA sells a cheap little $5 template that you can buy that you can stick right on top of all your cabinet faces. And it has a whole bunch of little holes drilled in it, which makes it really easy to line it up on all your doors. All you gotta do is make a note of which holes you're actually using. And if you wanna center them properly, there's a little notch on it and you just gotta make sure that that is lined up exactly in the center of the door face. You gotta be really careful with that because if you're off by a couple of millimeters on any one of those, when you take a look at the handles when all the drawers are closed, you're gonna see the one that's not lined up and it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. If you wanna make things easier on yourself, then you pick handles that only require you to drill one hole. Since I have to drill two, I have to make sure that they're both level and lined up and centered as well. The first few were a little bit frustrating, but after I got the hang of it, I started speeding through them pretty good. The only thing you really gotta pay attention to other than lining them up is having a little bit of strategy as to where you want your handles to be. On the upper cabinets, you want those handles lower so you can reach them properly. And on the lower cabinets, you want those higher up for the same reason. Just make sure you have a strategy of how you want everything to look and then match that up on every door regardless of the size. After I got all the handles installed, I moved on to finally doing my baseboards. Up until now, it's basically been unfinished walls down at the bottom and gaps at the ends of my wood floor. And when you look down there, it just looks like crap compared to the rest of the building. The baseboards were probably the easiest thing I had to do. Cutting them to the right length was really easy. There was only a couple of spots where I needed to cut notches out on them or anything like that, because for the most part, they'd slide right down underneath my cabinets. And I just used the magnet trick to find all of the drywall screws so I'd know exactly where I can drive all the finishing nails. After I had those secured, it was time to fill all the nail holes with a little bit of dry Dex. I like that stuff because it goes on pink and whenever it's dry enough to be sanded, it'll be solid white. Once it was dry, I was able to use my orbital sander to get everything nice and smooth. That's really important because if you have any bumps there, you're going to be able to tell where all your nails are and that's going to suck. After the sanding, even though I was using pre-primered wood, I still threw 2 coats of primer on over the top anyway. The reason you do that is because if you don't, there's going to be a color difference between the regular wood and wherever I put that spackle. After that, I threw on 3 coats of satin trim paint, and I was able to move on to the next step. That next step was to finish all the wiring in the island. Up until now, I just had some coiled up MC cables sitting on the side of the island, and I was getting close to doing the countertop, so I figured I'd better hurry up and get the electrical finished up. The process really wasn't that big a deal. Now that I already had the drawers and I knew exactly how much space I had left in the back of the cabinets. So I was able to drill holes all the way across, run the MC cable through, plan out where I wanted to put all my electrical receptacles, and then it was just a matter of cutting out all the holes and trimming them back really slowly to make sure they didn't get too big. That part was actually sort of a pain in the ass and took forever. Once I finally had those boxes in though, wiring the receptacles was pretty easy. You can see I put 3 sets of plugs on the back of the island. That's going to come in really handy because the island I was recording in the kitchen for the last year doesn't have any power to it at all. So I had extension cords running all over the kitchen every time I had to record something. Hey, by the way, if this is your first time here and you want to learn some cool new recipes, get some great cooking tips and tricks and all sorts of other kitchen related things, then start now by subscribing to the channel and clicking the notification bell so you never miss a thing. Next, the refrigerator arrived. I went with another Samsung Bespoke refrigerator similar to the one that I have in the house. The only difference being is this one has a beverage center in it and also has a flex drawer in the middle that you can customize the temperature in. Also, I customized the color on all the panels on the front. Came out looking pretty good, huh? Hooking it up was really easy because I already have the water connection hooked up and ready to go. And I got an electrical outlet down there ready to go as well, so it was just a matter of hooking up two things and sliding the refrigerator back. After that, all I needed to do was level the refrigerator and level the doors. Next, I moved on to the toe kicks. The IKEA ones are really easy to deal with. In fact, they're not really screwed into anything. All you do is you attach these little clamps to the back of them, and you just line those clamps up with the cabinet feet. The only part that can really be challenging at all is cutting them to length. And for the most part, that was just really easy to deal with. I used the longest pieces that I could to make sure I don't have any seams if possible, but there were still two spots where I had to connect pieces just because the runs are so long and they only come in 7-foot pieces. But the whole thing came out really good. It was easy and it only took about 20 minutes to do the whole thing. Next, I went on to cutting and finishing my island butcher block countertop. Luckily for me, the length already came in the exact length that I wanted it to be, so I was able to leave that alone. But it was a little bit deep, so I had to cut a little bit off of there. This is when it's a great idea to have a good circular saw. I just have a cheap battery-powered Ryobi, so for me to cut all the way across that butcher block took me something like 5 batteries. It was a combination of running all the battery power out and overheating the batteries and having to wait for them to cool down. Luckily, over the course of the last year building the studio, I've amassed something like 8 or 9 different batteries, so I always had charged and fresh ones ready to go. Lucky for me, because if I hadn't, it would have taken me 3 days to cut the freaking wood. After I cut it, I had to round all the corners and edges off with my sander, and even though the butcher block comes pre-sanded, I still hit it on both sides with my orbital sander with 220 grit paper. Just wanted to get that nice and smooth. To do the finishing on the butcher block, first I started on the bottom side. Remember, when you're doing something like this, you've got to do the bottom and the top. Don't just put the butcher block in and then try to finish them on your cabinets. You got to have the bottom finished too, because if you don't, you're going to get moisture up in the wood and it's going to ruin your countertops over time. I coated the bottom with pre-stain. Once that dried, I gave it 2 coats of dark walnut stain. I thought about making it darker, but I wanted a little bit of contrast between the walls and the countertop, so I just left it at the 2 coats and it came out really nice. After that dried, I mixed up some polyurethane with mineral spirits and gave it 3 coats of wipe-on poly. I ended up giving it about 3 hours between coats to make sure it dried really well, and then after the 3rd coat, I let it dry overnight. The next day, I was able to flip the countertops over, except on the top and sides, I gave it 7 coats with a light sanding between the 3rd and the 6th coat. That way I was able to get a nice thick coat of poly on there to protect the surface. Keep in mind that polyurethane is not food safe. Because of that, it's not really recommended to use it in kitchens, but it does offer superior protection. So if you're going to use it, remember that you can't have any food coming in contact with your countertops. However, if that still freaks you out, you should use food-safe oils to do your finishing. Just remember that those take a lot more maintenance and you're going to have to recoat every so often as well. After that was finished, I let it dry out in the garage for an extra day, and then we brought that into the studio and mounted it on the island. Next, it was time to install the Frigidaire double combo oven. That thing was heavy as hell. Good thing that my son is strong as an ox, because I would have been screwed otherwise. The oven cabinet was rated to hold 350 pounds and the oven itself is only 275. But just to be safe, I put another piece of plywood up underneath and reinforced the entire thing. Then we were able to slide that oven in, and then I was able to do all the direct electrical connections, throw some anti-tipping screws into the face, and throw all the drawers back on. Finally, I was able to get to my softbox lights. For the past year since we bought this place and I've been recording in the kitchen inside the main house, I've had to keep all the lights on stands and put them away after each recording. Now, finally, I was able to put all my permanent light fixtures back up into the ceiling in the studio, along with my 2 swivel fixtures. Then I was able to get all the lights mounted sort of in the places that they need to be. The lighting locations aren't absolutely perfect, but it also depends on where I have open space too. With those lights going up, now the place really does look like a recording studio. I still got a little bit of work to do, but there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. And the best part is I don't have any more expensive shit to buy. You know, it's kind of a bummer. This thing should already be done, but I was having a whole bunch of issues with my butcher block countertop. The first piece that came for the island came warped. What? And the second piece had a slight bend in it, but I was able to kind of deal with it anyway. But you can see right here, I don't have either piece of butcher block for my main countertops. They've somehow been in transit for something like 3 weeks and I'm having issues getting them delivered, but hopefully I'll get them here pretty quick. Once that butcher block finally gets here, I'll be able to get it stained and sealed in about a day. Then it'll be about 1 more day to get this stuff back here installed. and then the third day to do the backsplash, and we'll be all finished. It's been a really great experience, but I'd be lying if I didn't tell you I just want it to be done. If you like this video, you might want to check out this playlist right here that has all of the construction of the studio since day one. If I could tell you one thought about that, it would be, I can't believe I'm not dead. Well, that's it for now. I hope to see you back again here really soon, and until that time, I'm Joe, and I hope you have a phenomenal day. Take it easy.